Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me, my name is Sarah, and in today's video we're going to be doing a festival breakdown. So I went to a festival last weekend and I had great success, but there are some things I'd like to talk about, both pros and cons, and just let you guys know if a festival is worth your time compared to, say, a market. So today we're going to talk about my inventory, both the total monetary value of the inventory, and talk about my best sellers, so things that sold first for me, things that people really like to look at. And then we'll also be talking about the expenses. Because this was a festival, the expenses are a lot higher than, say, a regular market or a craft fair. So we'll get into that and we'll talk about that too. Today I will just be crocheting one of my patterns. It's my baby dragon pattern, and I'll be putting up photos and stuff on the screen of the items that I'm talking about. So if you're interested in this pattern, you can check it out in the description, and I'll also link any other patterns as well that I mention in today's video. The first thing I wanted to talk about, well, actually, before we get right into it, I did want to do a little bit of a disclaimer. A festival and a market aren't the same thing. There is a pretty big difference between markets and festivals, and I just wanted to let you guys know that I had a lot of things that I brought with me. The expenses were also a lot higher. The foot traffic's a lot higher for a festival than it would be for a market. If you're interested in doing a festival and maybe the booth fee or something is putting you off, I recommend watching this video, and I'll let you know if I made any mistakes or things that I could improve on next time, so that if you want to do it, you can try and learn from my mistakes before you do them yourself. But yeah, the festival is about 10 to 15 times more foot traffic than a market, if not more than that. So keep that in mind as we go through what sold today and all the expenses and everything. They are a lot higher on all sides of the equation. My microphone keeps putting pop-ups on the screen, so it keeps getting cut off, but I don't really know what I was saying. Best sellers, that's what I was saying. So my best sellers for the market were my minis. So my mini bin they're like 20 to 30 minute projects, and they're all mini, so like handheld size. And I made a bunch of mini possums, a bunch of mini chickens, a whole bunch of sea creatures, and I charged $6 each or 2 for $10, and that was an absolute huge hit. I mean, usually the minis bin is the best for me at a market, but I mean, in the first day during the festival, almost all the minis were gone. I think I had maybe like 15 left by the end of the show. So if you are looking for something that's pretty quick and like a cheaper item on the table, so for people who can't afford too much, the minis bin is really the way to go. So the minis bin did really well. The mini possums were the best seller. They were gone like in the first day, which I made 20 of them, I think, so they just were snatched up and gone. The next best sellers that I have on my table, they were $12 pieces. So these were bees, chickens, caterpillars, and possums. So like my mini possum, but made in plush yarn. Those are an absolute hit. So the chickens I brought with me, I brought 28 chickens and sold 27 of them. Then I brought 21 bees and I sold them all on day 2. And then the possums, I brought 10 of them and they sold out on the first. But then the next day I made 15 of them during the market and sold all 15. And then the next day I made, I believe, 14, sold all 14 the next day. So a total of 39 possums sold, and I will definitely be making at least 50 for another market in the area that I was at. It's just that area was, I believe the possum was a mascot for something. I'm not from around the area, but they were a hit, absolute hit, sold so many of them. I actually made the possums $15 on the last day, which is what I should have done for all of them. I was charging $12 because I was at a smaller market selling them for $12. I think at this bigger market I should have upped the price to $15. We'll get into the expenses later, and I'll tell you why after we get through the bulk of the inventory. And the next best seller were my $10 pieces. They weren't exactly my best sellers, but they did sell out because people really like to be able to spend a small amount of money on something. So 10 to 12 to 15 is usually a good price range, especially if it's really cute. The $10 pieces were just a bunch of random things, and the main issue with my $10 pieces is they all kind of sit on the table, which I'll show you. I have some photos of the table, They sit on the table and they don't have any, like, they just all kind of look like blob together, if that makes sense. They're just kind of like a mess of colors. And I think that makes it a hard sell when you're at like a regular market. At a festival, when the foot traffic's higher, people just kind of try and get what they can and go. So yeah, I mean, the $10 pieces, they sold well. But I basically sold out, period. So things that sold out on the first day were my best seller, or things that I put out and sold the day I put them out were really good sellers. A couple other things that sold well, I have axolotls. Sea turtles were a massive hit, as always. People really, really love their sea turtles. I had just a lot of random things on my table, which I highly recommend doing if you are looking to do markets. Do some like cool looking stuff, add some one-of-a-kind pieces to your table, and it'll really encourage people to buy your things, because they'll walk up, they'll see it, and they won't see anything else like it on the table, and they know that if they don't get it now, somebody else will probably scoop it up before they can come back. So keep that in mind when you are building your inventory up. You still want to have some staples. So my staples are chickens, possums, bees, caterpillars, and then I'll also be staples for dragons, which are my bigger pieces, unicorns, and stuff like that. So you want to have some staples, and then you want to have some unique pieces that you probably won't make again, just so that people can, you know, pick out of them. And I had, like, say I had one hippo and it sold, I had one cat and it sold, and it just made it more special for the person buying it, because they know it's the only thing on the table that's like that. And if you hate making it, you don't have to make it again. It doesn't have to become a staple. If you are working towards a market or a festival, I highly recommend doing that, because it just helps build up your stock. You can do some pricier items, and even if it's a niche item, somebody will eventually come up and buy it, especially at a festival where the foot traffic is 150,000 or more. So yeah, the next bestseller I had was my dragons, which I mentioned just a bit earlier. The dragons are an absolute hit. I was selling this pattern that I'm working on now. I made it out of plushie yarn and I sold them for 30 each, and they all sold incredibly fast. I think there were only like 2 left on the second day, and I had at least 6 of them. And then my elephants sold really well. That's my own pattern as well. The elephants were a hit. Cows, gone, which is also my pattern. I'll be releasing soon. But the cow plushies moved really, really quickly, and people were really sad when they were gone. At my next market, I will definitely be making at least twice as many cows, twice as many dragons. And I also had to say my big pieces also sold really well. So if you're going to a regular market, you might just want to have a few big pieces. I know they can be really expensive to make. The yarn can be expensive, the time and the effort and everything. But I definitely recommend that you make bigger pieces. They can just be statement pieces. And if they sell, then awesome. If they don't, then that's also good, because now you still have your statement piece for the next market or your next festival. I sold all 5 of my big dragons. So they were from $70 to $90. Every single one of those guys sold, and they sold really quickly too. The unicorns were a hard sell for me. I don't know if they're just not as popular right now, or if my style isn't what people are looking for when it comes to a unicorn. For the most part, I mean, at the last day, they sold well, but that's because they were basically the last thing left on the table. So I don't recommend making a whole lot of unicorns. I think it's worthwhile to make a few and have them on the table, bigger, smaller, whatever. Don't expect them to sell as well as the other stuff. And again, if you're in a different area, you might have a different experience. Your dragons might not sell at all, but your unicorns might sell out. So just keep that in mind when you're prepping, that not every market you're going to have the same experience. You're going to have different experiences for each market. You're going to sell more of one item and less of another. All my velvet pieces sold incredibly well. I'll put a photo up on the screen of my booth, a little bit zoomed in so you can see the velvet items. I had bats in there, I had fish, we had sharks, which honestly the sharks didn't sell as well as I thought they would, but that is what it is. We had sea turtles, a whole lot of those guys. We had jellyfish. The jellyfish were my favorite, super cute. I think I'll be releasing a free pattern for that. I already have one up, but it's not the best pattern. We'll talk about that in the future. I had some mini dragons like the one I'm working on right now. Sold them for $20. All 4 of those sold. 2 of them in the first day and the other 2 the second day. I mean, basically everything I brought with me did sell really well. Just certain things I could tell were better sellers on the first day than the next day. And I kind of scrounged around and found random things that I had, did some clearance prices, not that anyone knows that they're clearance prices, and got rid of a lot of the things that I didn't want to hold on to anymore. I had some Halloween stuff which sold really well. I believe I put that up on the second day. They all sold really well. I'm trying to think. We had some Christmas things. You know, the only thing that didn't sell well for me, and I didn't sell a single one of them, were my gnomes. Crazy to me. It's super weird because I've had people come up and they're like, oh my gosh, they're so cute, but nobody bought any. And I don't know if it's not the time of year or if there are too many gnomes in the area that they didn't want to get a plushie version too. I would also like to say that my festival I did really well at because I was one of the only crochet vendors there. There was somebody else who crocheted plushies as well, but she was not specialized in it. Her work was amazing. Don't get me wrong, that's not what I mean. What I mean is she wasn't just selling plushies, and it wasn't like a business that I could tell yet. I mean, it might have been. I didn't really talk to her too much. I kind of regret not talking to her. There wasn't any other crochet vendors at all. It seemed like the festival I was at, there was a little bit more willingness to spend money. There was a brighter attitude. Everybody was really happy, and that's something that I haven't really experienced too much of at certain smaller markets, but that just is what it is. I forgot to mention, but the dinos are also a huge hit for these markets. Dinosaurs, all of them sold as well, basically on the first day. The other hard sell I had were penguins, so they were like the pill-shaped penguins. I don't know why they were hard to sell, but this is the first market where I've actually managed to sell them all. And I think the only reason I managed to sell them all is because how many people showed up at the event. If it was a smaller market, I probably wouldn't have sold a single one of them. The snakes are also a huge hit if you want to do some more boy-themed toys. Girls also really like the snakes, but having that option available for some boys is amazing for them. So dragons, snakes, spiders, stuff like that for the boys. And I mean, a girl can get it if she wants, but not a lot of boys are going to want, you know, a pink axolotl or something. Also brought baby blankets, which did not sell well, which was a little disappointing, but they were also pricey baby blankets. And there's also a lot of people who can crochet baby blankets and stuff like that, who can't do the plushies and stuff. That's going to affect how well they sell. I also had some regular blankets that I just brought to get rid of, sold them for $50. They were just like little throws, and I sold half of them. So that helped clean up my area a little bit, make some room for some other more important things. For the most part, I am not going to be crocheting blankets for markets anymore. I'll probably just do them for custom orders or something like that. Just blankets can be really expensive, they're really time consuming, and not a lot of people really want to pay that much for them, which is totally understandable. I completely get it. I had some Star Wars themed stuff that sold well. I probably won't be remaking them. It takes a lot of work to make those things. I don't think the profit I received is necessarily worth the time, especially since they're not the biggest pieces you can make. I don't know, I haven't decided yet. It's just, I've found that the Star Wars stuff is always hit and miss anyways. They don't always sell very well, but it's good to have that option, but I might not restock it. I don't know, we'll see. I had cardinals. I had 2 of those guys out of acrylic yarn. Those sold really well, which was interesting. I also had some teddy bears, just some random teddy bears I made, different sizes, different textures and stuff. For the most part, everything else is just kind of some random things that I had on hand, either pattern tests or just things that I wanted to experiment with and never made another one of. The best seller was my possums of all sizes. I had a big one, sold that pretty quickly. Possums were the biggest hit. Chickens, bees, caterpillars, those type of things, they were also really good. I'll definitely be upping the price next year to $15 instead of $12 for some of those items, and I might change the $10 items to $12 items, and I'm looking into getting some better stands for them to make them look a lot nicer. I've got some big plans, and I think they will turn out really, really nice. That's about it for the inventory. That's all I really need to talk about for that. I'm sure you guys are probably bored that I'm talking your ear off about inventory. So the next thing we'll talk about is the expenses. So this is something important. The expenses are probably the worst part of a festival. So if you go to like a craft market, you're probably gonna be paying around $25 to $100 to be there. For most part, most of the markets I've been to were $50 each, and I made probably around $600 to $900. It really depends on the market. Usually it was around $500 for every $50. So I always like to, when I go to a market, decide how much I need to make if I were willing to go back again next year. And that's not the only deciding factor. You know, was it worth my time? Was I treated well? Were there anything that I didn't want to deal with again next year? But then I also like to make a certain amount of money based on the money I spent to be there. Festival was a $455 booth fee. Very, very high booth fee. I had to pay a $50 late fee because I hadn't applied until later, because I didn't actually hear about the event until later. I'm very grateful that I actually got in, because this experience has made me want to do it again, but we'll get more into the recommendations after the expenses. We gotta go through the hard part first. So I also have to pay sales tax, which was 6% of my total profit. I did not add sales tax on top of things, which is the main reason why I would want to charge a bit more for certain things, so that I can cover that sales tax and not like lose money. I'm already used to paying expenses online and stuff like that, paying fees, so it's not a huge deal. But it wasn't something that I was expecting, which I should have. But it is what it is. It doesn't need to be a big deal. It's just something to keep in mind for next year if I go back again. The expenses right now are booth fee, sales tax, and then the final expense, the main expense, was gas and food. We lived about an hour and a half away from the event space, and we had to drive back and forth for 3 days in a row. So the gas was very expensive, probably about $200 to $300 in gas, if not more. I already took out the expenses for the profit, so I'm not entirely certain how much we spent. That's something I have to do math on later, but I figured it's not that big of a deal. I expected to spend money on food and gas, and it is what it is. So we probably spent maybe $3 to $4, if not more, on food and gas. If you're willing to spend that much, good. I think it is worth going to. I would also say that pack some snacks so you don't have to pay for food at the event space, because that can be really expensive, especially because what I went to was a carnival, was a festival. The food is very expensive, so if you are going, bring some snacks, eat breakfast and dinner somewhere else. You can probably splurge and get, you know, lunch or something. I wouldn't recommend getting every meal there. It definitely adds up. That's about it for the expenses. I mean, we had expenses before the event, like tablecloths and stuff like that, because I was picking new tablecloths. I had to get new tablecloths because I wanted a more professional look, but I'm not counting that as expenses for the event, because those things will be paid for as we continue to do the festivals and stuff. That's about it for the expenses, and we can finally get into the total profit. So total profit was about $6,000, a little bit more, and that is minus the expenses, the booth fee. It's minus all of that money I had to spend to be at the event space. That is a very, very good profit. My goal for this event was to make $5,600 or I would not come back, because the time put into it, the expenses I paid wouldn't be worth it. But for 3 days of work to gain over $6,000 in profit, that is mind-boggling to me. It was well worth my time for my business. It might not be worth your time if you aren't specialized yet. Maybe you don't have a large inventory. For every $50 I spent, I would want to make about $500. And I just calculated this with the booth fee because I didn't know the expenses until afterwards. I didn't know how much it would be. Now that I know, I can keep that in mind for the future event. But my bare minimum one was $5,600, and that was $455 times $600. So if I went to, say, 9 markets and I made an average amount of money, that would be how much I need to make for this money I spent to be worth it. But the other thing is there's less time involved by going to a 3-day event over 9 markets over 9 weekends. So there's that too. Would you rather suffer for 3 days or have it a little bit more of a chill experience but have it over the course of 9 weeks. And to make all that money in one sitting is better for me personally, but I can see how that might be a risk for some people and a risk they're not willing to take, which is totally fine too. That's why I wanted to do this video, just in case you're considering it. Maybe there's some things that I can tell you that you wanted to hear before you do it. I have quite a few recommendations before I close out this video, and please listen to these recommendations, especially if you haven't done a market yet, or maybe you did a market and you don't like it, because these recommendations will save your life and they will make it so much funner and so much easier. The first recommendation I have for you is to get a card reader. Now, I know that card readers can be a little scary. You want to get a card reader. I use the Square card reader. I bought the $60 card reader. It allows you to do tap and insert pays. So with chip, seriously, you need to get it. You just sign up and it takes like 3%, I believe, if not less than that, of your each sale. It is so worth it. And you will be absolutely surprised how many people will ask you if you take card. And how many people will just expect you to take card too. I made a mistake and went to a smaller festival and didn't have a card reader, and you miss out on sales when you do that. So please go get a card reader, and you just charge the Square reader and you set it up on your phone. You have the app. Now, the only downside that I have found that's a major issue for the Square reader is that if you don't have internet, you're not going to be easily able to take payment. So we had an issue where my phone, because we were further away from our home and the tower and everything that we normally use for our phones, my phone was not working very well. And it came to the point where I couldn't load the Square app anymore. Now, because I couldn't take any payments, we did have a couple awkward situations where it like charged somebody but didn't actually pay me. So hopefully she received her refund. She hasn't contacted me, so I have to assume she did. But if you don't have a card reader, you're going to miss out on sales. I made about $2,400 through Square, and you would not make that money. You might make half that money in cash, because some people might have cash. They might be able to scrounge around and they might want to come back. Seriously, if you don't have it already, get a card reader. It is so worth it, and honestly, so much easier than taking cash. All you have to do is type in the total and then have somebody do their card, and it walks you right through it. It's so much easier than having to count the cash and touch the cash and smell the cash. If you don't have a card reader, get one. It is worth the expense. You will get your money back very quickly if you are serious about your business and everything. It is very worth it. And I mean, it's only $60. Like, I know that $60 might seem like a lot. I mean, other card readers can be really expensive, but that's the only thing you have to pay. You don't have to pay for a program or anything. You don't have to pay to access the app or anything. You just have to pay the $60. And you can also get the free version, which is just a swipe card reader, and that one's free. So if you don't want to spend the $60 yet, maybe you want to give it a try first and see how you like it, then stick with the free version as well. Definitely get a card reader if you're going to go to an event, especially bigger festival and events. They just expect you to have a card reader. And if you don't have a card reader, you're going to miss out on very large sales. You'll want a safe for cash. I just have a small cash box. I don't know how much it was because we bought it a long time ago, but it locks, it keeps the money safe, and it makes you look more professional. It's much easier to get the money out of a safe box than it is to get it out of, say, your purse or an envelope or something. And also, if you're going to a festival, you're going to receive a lot of cash, and half the time people will pay you in small change, especially if they don't have the bigger bills on hand. Obviously, duh, but you get what I mean. You need something to store your money in where it will be safe, secure, where you'll look professional while doing it and everything. Something that you can lock and carry around with you later. I've noticed people use their purse and stuff, or like a small cash purse, but if you're going to a festival like this where you're going to be working with thousands of dollars, definitely get something that can actually hold it, and something that can keep it safe, and something that can keep it sorted as well. The next thing you'll want to do is you'll want to brand your tags. Now, this doesn't really have a lot to do with specifically a festival, but just in general, brand your tags, put your name on there, put some websites on there if you have them, and just so that people, when they purchase your thing, you don't have to put a business card in their bag. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about forgetting about it. You can just give them their doll, and there they have the name of your brand. It's not that hard. What I did was I designed them in Canva, and then I print them on cardstock and I cut them. Otherwise it would be very expensive to order like pre-cut tags. So there's cheaper ways to do it. There's ways to cut corners and still have a very high quality professional look. So brand your tags if you haven't already. It's very, very important for getting your brand out there and for letting people know who you are. I originally started with just like price tags, but if you're going to go through all the work to tag your things anyway, you might as well tag them with your name on them. The next thing you'll want to do is find a way to bring your items to the event. So I originally was putting all my pieces in plastic bins, and they didn't fit in the car very well, honestly. And I thought it was so cool because, you know, they're plastic and everything's safe. And then one of the plastic bins broke, and it's like, I just spent $20 on this and now it's got a huge hole in the bottom. I don't recommend plastic, but we recently bought some cloth bins on Amazon, which I'll put the link in the description. They're not the most attractive. They're kind of ugly, but they store your pieces really well. You can fold the bags down and put them in themselves, so they take up much less space. If they're empty, you can fill them. You can overfill them because they're not hard plastic or anything. They'll stretch and they'll make room. They stack really well. They can go basically anywhere, and they have 2 handles on the side. All around, just a really awesome thing that we put money into, and it wasn't even that expensive. It comes in a 12 pack, and when you receive the box, it's going to look tiny, but they open up and they hold a whole lot more than I thought they would. They're not stiff at all though, so keep that in mind. I expected them to be stiff and they're not, which is actually fine. I mean, it worked out for me. That is the best way that I found to bring the stuff to the market. You can shove them in basically any nook and cranny you have left over after you put the table canopy and stuff in. So make sure to check that out if you are having trouble with storage or anything for markets, or maybe that's something that concerns you. Definitely check those out because they were so worth the purchase, and none of them have ripped and none of them have torn. There's been some pretty heavy stuff in there, and none of them are showing wear and tear, and we dragged them around for 3 days straight. So highly recommend those, or anything similar at that point. Something cloth, something that can fold down. The next thing is to get a good chair. Now this is something that I have not done, and it's something I regret not doing. I'm just gonna be real with you for a second. I stood for probably 6 to 8 hours at each market, and we were there for a good 12 hours. So most of the time I was just standing there talking to people, crocheting, watching over the booth and everything. And I have to tell you, my feet hurt so bad after the second day, and we still had a third day to go, the longest day on Saturday. If you don't want to hear this, skip forward maybe 10 seconds. My feet had the worst blisters on them, and they were like deep, super painful. Like my feet felt like they were burning. We had like these foldable chairs, just like metal with a 1 cushion. And I have to say, my back hurt so bad, my feet hurt so bad after that event. If you don't have a good chair and you expect to be standing for 3 days, if you expect to be at the festival for 3 days, seriously get a good chair. I regret not doing it, and I will be doing it before my next event because I don't think I can ever do that again. That was the worst thing. It was so worth being there, except for the pain I was in that chair and standing. Like, there was no good option anymore. Get a good chair if you don't have one already. I'm sure it'll be worth the price. The final thing I want to add is you want to use unique patterns. Now, not everything needs to be a unique pattern, and it doesn't have to be of your own design either, but something that's cute, something that isn't super popular, and something where you're not doing, you know, all the latest trends. Now, that's not to say I don't do latest trends or anything, because I do. I mean, I have the octopi and the sea turtles and the possums and all that stuff, but have some staples, but have some unique items. You want maybe half your stock to be unique, or something that you don't see a lot of, and seriously, people will buy them from you. They absolutely love coming up and seeing the unique items, the things that are 1 of a kind or 2 of a kind. They love buying things in pairs. They love to get things with a deal. You don't have to design your own patterns to have unique patterns. You don't have to be a pattern designer, although it is a really cool thing to say that you design most of the patterns. The other thing is that if you do design your own patterns, you can sell the patterns, and if people come up who can crochet, ask you where you received your pattern, you can tell them that you made it, and they'll go and buy your pattern. Seriously, this is the best, like, little circle going on. They won't purchase something from the table because they can make it themselves, but they'll purchase the pattern from me because it's up. Think about it. If you have a hard time pattern designing, you don't have to do it. It's just an additional way that you can expand your business, hopefully make less things, but still have the same amount of profit so that your hands don't fall off, you know? Use more unique patterns than you would think. I did a wallaby by, I believe her name's Lucy Kate. It was a wallaby with a little Joey. That thing I sold for $50, and people just love to look at it, and not everyone could afford it, not everyone wanted it, but people love to look at it, and it drawed people in. Definitely make some unique things, make some big things, work on some small things for, say, the $10 to $15 price range. And if you can't go down to the 10 to 15, that's okay too. You can go to the 15 to 20 price range. I would definitely think about trying to make things quickly for the $10 price range. It just will help your sales a lot more if you have some cheaper items on the table. A good portion of people usually had about $10 that they were willing to part with. $10 to $12 that they had no issue spending at all. And even up to $15 they had no issue spending. If you're thinking about going to a big festival like this, keep that in mind. You want a whole lot of things with smaller price points in them. Not in them, that's weird. I think I've kind of rambled long enough, but if you have any questions about the market, you can let me know in the comments. If I missed anything, definitely let me know, and I will answer your questions. If you came to this festival and you purchased something from me, you guys are awesome, and I really appreciate your support. I really hope that whatever you purchase lasts forever. I take great pride in my work, and it just makes me want to keep going when people support me, and people were so excited, and it made me want to go back. So if you didn't get a chance to see me, I will be going back next year, and I will be bringing even more stuff, and I'll probably announce where I'm going next year as well. I plan to go to another festival sometime in September, maybe August, or maybe even November, which I might announce. If you're interested, and I can announce it. I will be just non-stop crocheting. Also, if any of you are curious how I have so much stock, I don't have a job outside the house. This crochet business is my job at this point. I'm not married, I don't have any kids or anything, so I have a lot of free time. Like, I maintain the house, and then everything else is crochet time. Like, any extra second I have is crochet time, so that's why I'm able to build up the stock I had within such a short period of time. I'm also a really fast crocheter because I've been doing this for a long time, and I've also been practicing to make myself more efficient. I always like to try and be as efficient as I possibly can. If you're not where I'm at, don't feel bad about it, because everyone's at different skill levels. They learn different, they've got different techniques, everyone is different. So if you don't make, you know, as much as I did, then that's perfectly fine. If you're going to a festival, I wouldn't go unless you had maybe $8,000 worth of inventory. Say about 2/3 of what you want to make, if that makes sense. So let's say your goal is 6,000, you'd probably want to bring around 9,000. If you're the only vendor there with the stuff you have, that will make your sales even better. If not, you'll just have to compete with quality. Make sure your work is really, really nice, really not going to fall apart, it's going to hold together. If you do that, you will make sales. Even if somebody else is there who's selling their items for cheaper, you still will sell your pieces. Now, some people might not know the difference, but a good amount of people know what quality is. They know how soft it is. They know how good it looks. They know that it holds together well. So if you can keep those standards up for yourself, then you will make sales even if you are with other crocheters. And who knows, maybe next year some people might get some ideas and they might try and do what I'm doing. I'll just have to continue to work on my quality and never sacrifice that. You don't want to sacrifice your quality for time and for your money. You want to take as long as you need and then charge what you're worth. And usually I charge the bare minimum. That's something that I am learning to adjust and everything. It's just a learning curve. Whether you're experienced or you're not experienced, you'll have to learn. You'll have to figure it out. So that's about it. That's all I have to add. Like I said, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'd love to answer them. But I had a wonderful time. I would go back again, and I highly recommend doing festivals if you have the money and the time and the ability. It is so much better than a market, in my opinion. Now, there might be some really good markets out there, but for me, it was definitely well worth my time, well worth the effort, and something that I will be doing again for future festivals. I hope you all are having a wonderful day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!